Ever wondered what makes some companies just click? They're super efficient, everyone knows what they're doing, while other places seem like they're just stuck in total chaos? Well, a huge part of that comes down to one core idea: organizational structure. Let's get into it.
Come on, you know that feeling. We've all been there, right? The deadline is getting closer, you've got ideas flying all over the place, but nobody has a clue who's supposed to make the final decision. It's just messy, it's frustrating, and honestly, not much really gets done. Okay, now just blow that up. Imagine that same exact chaos, but instead of a grade, there are thousands of jobs and millions of dollars at stake. Yeah, that's why businesses literally can't afford that kind of mess. Getting the structure right isn't just some boring admin task. It's absolutely critical for survival.
So, what is an organizational structure? Well, at its heart, it's the company's blueprint. It's the master plan that lays out who does what, who reports to whom, and how all the different pieces of the company are supposed to fit together. It's what brings order to all that potential chaos.
So in this explainer, we're going to dig into what that blueprint is actually made of. We'll look at some of the most common designs out there, from the classic pyramids to more flexible setups. And we'll tackle the big question: how does a company actually choose the right one?
All right. Just like any blueprint, an org structure is made from a few key parts. These are the absolute fundamentals that define how a company works. Let's start with the most obvious one.
And that would be the hierarchy. This is basically the corporate ladder, the different levels of management and authority, with the senior folks at the top and everyone else on the rungs below.
It's a pretty simple concept when you see it laid out. Up at the top, you've got your CEO, the person with the most authority. And as you go down through the different layers of management, all the way to the frontline employees, that scope of authority gets a little narrower. Now, tied directly to hierarchy is the chain of command. This is the official path that instructions and orders follow down through the company. It makes it crystal clear who you answer to and who answers to them. No confusion.
And our final building block is called the span of control. This one's super important. It's simply the number of people a manager is directly in charge of. It might sound like a small detail, but you're about to see how this one thing, whether that number is big or small, radically changes the entire shape of a company.
See, if a manager only oversees a handful of people, that's a narrow span of control. It means you're going to need a lot more managers, and therefore a lot more layers in the company. This is what gives you that classic tall pyramid shape.
But on the other hand, if you have a wide span of control, where managers are responsible for a whole lot of employees, you end up with way fewer layers. The whole organization becomes much, much flatter. And that simple difference is what creates the two big archetypes of company structure. Which brings us to the great debate in organizational design. Is it better to be tall, or is it better to be flat?
And you can see the two of them right here. On the left, you've got the tall structure with all its different levels, and on the right, the flat one, much more streamlined. Just looking at them, you can probably already guess that working in each of these would feel totally different. And yeah, they each come with some major trade-offs.
So here's the deal. In a tall structure, communication can be pretty slow. A message has to travel up and down all those layers. But managers aren't as swamped, and hey, there are more rungs on the ladder for promotions. In a flat structure, communication is lightning fast, but your managers might be stretched super thin, and with fewer levels, there aren't as many places to get promoted to. It's a classic trade-off. But of course, the real world isn't always so simple. Not every company is a neat little pyramid. Modern businesses have come up with some much more complex and, frankly, more flexible ways to organize. A really popular one is the functional structure. This is where you organize the company into departments based on what people do. So you'll have your marketing department, your finance team, operations, and so on. It's super efficient because you're putting all the experts in one place. Okay, now things get a little bit tricky with the matrix structure. At first glance, it looks like a complicated grid, and it kind of is. The whole idea is to get the best of both worlds by combining those stable departments with more nimble, project-focused teams. And this is the part that can bend your brain a little. You end up reporting to two bosses. So, for example, an engineer reports to the head of engineering for things like their training and career growth. But on a day-to-day basis, they also report to a project manager for whatever new product they're working on. It can be complex, for sure, but it lets companies pull together expert teams really fast. Now, a much more modern idea comes from a thinker named Charles Handy. It's called the Shamrock Organization. It's a model that's built from the ground up for flexibility, and it pictures the company as having three distinct leaves.
Kind of like a shamrock.
So let's look at those three leaves. The first leaf is your core professional staff, the essential full-time people who are the heart of the business. The second leaf is what's called the contractual fringe. These are specialists or even whole companies you hire to do things like accounting or IT support. And the third leaf, that's your flexible labor force, your part-timers and temps who help you scale up or down as needed. So after looking at all these different models, you gotta ask, which one is the best? Well, as you've probably figured out by now, there's no magic answer. There is no one-size-fits-all. The right structure for a tiny, fast-moving tech startup is going to be completely wrong for a giant global manufacturing company. It's all about context. So let's just boil this all down. What should you take away from this? First, an org structure isn't just a chart on a wall. It's the company's vital blueprint for how to get things done. Second, every single design involves a trade-off, usually between moving fast and staying in control. And finally, the best choice is always changing. It depends on the company's goals, its size, and the industry it's in. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. In a world with AI, remote work, and global teams, the old idea of a rigid hierarchy just doesn't seem to fit anymore. So the real question is, what kind of new, innovative, and flexible blueprints will the successful companies of tomorrow be built on?